Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Dome Light EROCK. I guess this is going to start to be a thing now. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But either way, I wanted to get on camera and elaborate a little further on a discussion that we had on 4th and John on Tuesday. You can check that episode out on NBC Sports Philadelphia. But it's basically, I wanted to talk a little further and elaborate a little further on the entire Nick Foles situation. Because the Nick Foles situation and hashtag FolesWatch is going to be by far, I believe, the most interesting off-season talking point, discussion, argument, not only here in Philadelphia, but nationally as free agency and the draft kind of move on and the offseason kind of starts to move on. FolesWatch is definitely going to be one of the more interesting topics out there. I did start to talk about it, even started to, explain my thoughts on it a little on Twitter, and what I came to realize is there's a lot of people kind of in the dark of exactly how this situation is going to unfold. Not that I know how it's going to unfold, but there's certain types of options, and there's certain things. It's difficult waters to navigate. It really is, because it's a situation. So what I want to do is go over kind of the 4 options that the Eagles have with Nick Foles in the offseason, then rank them what's likely and least likely, and then give you my opinion on what I would do if I was the Eagles and Howie Roseman in the front office. So first of all, just to kind of go over it, the Eagles have until about February 15th to exercise an option on Nick Foles' contract. If they so choose to exercise the option on Nick Foles' contract, what they're basically doing is locking him down next year for about $20 million. And then there's even money for the 2020 season and the 2021 season. There's a significant amount of money, which ends up Nick Foles is going to be paid like a starter, even though he would clearly, based upon what Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman said in their season-ending press conferences, this is Carson Wentz's team, so clearly he would be a backup. At that point, he has about 5 days to opt out of the deal. He has a 5-day window to opt out. If he so chooses to opt out, he has to pay the Philadelphia Eagles back $2 million. So the Eagles can opt in, he can opt right out, pay the $2 million, and basically buy his freedom. That does not, however, prevent the Philadelphia Eagles from them slapping a franchise tag on Nick Foles. So instead of picking up his option for 2019 next season at $20 million, they would have him under a 1-year deal under the franchise tag rules for about 25, give or take. Those numbers will come out later as far as what the franchise tag is for, or the dollar amount associated with the franchise tag for quarterbacks. So with that being said, here are the options that can go down with Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles this offseason. The Eagles can pick up his option by February 15th. Nick Foles can then sign that option and agree to stay on with the team. $20 million guaranteed, at least for next year, and remain a Philadelphia Eagle. That is the least likely of scenarios for a couple of reasons. Number one, Carson Wentz has 2 years left on his deal. If they truly believe he is the franchise quarterback, he will be signing one of those deals that, inevitably every rookie quarterback ends up signing, like a Jared Goff or Russell Wilson in Seattle, a very large and lucrative contract after their rookie first-round pick deal is done. That would be very cost prohibitive. If Nick Foles was making, close to triple, quadruple, whatever the amount of Carson Wentz too, you're also doing the club kind of a disservice financially, because that is now tying up way too much money at the quarterback position, and you are not going to be able to, not only sign some of these guys that are pending free agents this year, but you're not going to be able to sign free agents out there on the market. You're gonna basically, tie yourself up with too much money, and you're setting yourself up for failure in that department. I also feel like Nick needs to go. One way or the other. Nick Foles needs to move on, both for Nick and for the sake of Carson. Because heaven forbid, you know, Carson Wentz comes out, you know, in the beginning of the 2019 season, and then all of a sudden, you know, struggles or throws 2 picks or 3 picks or whatever, gets off to a slow start, kind of the way he did this year. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to be hearing the Eagles fans booing and yelling for Nick Foles, and that's going to be fodder for sports talk radio. And you are, in essence, you've heard me mention on the podcast, you are, in essence, manufacturing a quarterback controversy, which you don't want to do. Part of the hard reset that I've been preaching about Carson Wentz, shutting him down for this 2018 season, is not only because of his knee and his back and all the injuries that he suffered and his psyche and getting his timing back and so on and so forth. It also has to do a lot with, like, Nick has to go. Carson can't be feeling like he's pushing too hard or looking over his shoulder. So Nick Foles being back with the Philadelphia Eagles, I think, is the most unlikely scenario out of the 4. The second scenario is which he just walks away from football. There was once a point in time where he wanted to retire from football altogether prior to winning the Super Bowl and being a Super Bowl MVP, prior to being picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles, so on and so forth. I know there is a calling for him. His calling is probably as a pastor or some sort of minister or something, you know, with his religion. Whether that's a motivational speaker, I don't know, but he has a higher calling, which he has plenty of time to pursue. I don't think Nick Foles is done playing football. Now, granted, this is kind of the height, you know, the absolute pinnacle of his success as a quarterback in the NFL. It would be... he should capitalize on that. So I don't see him walking away from the game of football quite yet. The next option is, I would say option number 3, and the second the most likely scenario, is that the Eagles opt into the contract, he opts out of the contract, pays the Eagles $2 million, then we all go our separate ways. He is then free to sign with whomever and negotiate whatever kind of deal he would like. And in all likelihood, not this upcoming draft, but the draft after that, depending on what he signs, the Eagles would get likely a, you know, a late third round compensatory pick. That's the most likely scenario besides the one that I have in my own head. And if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman, this is how I would handle the offseason when it comes to Nick Foles. Now, I'm not saying that this will happen. I'm not saying that that I'm not missing some sort of slight nuance within the contract or Nick Foles' thinking or the Philadelphia Eagles thinking. This could totally not even happen at all. But if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm not letting Nick Foles walk away from this organization with $2 million in my pocket, which doesn't mean anything. Which, Nick, you keep the $2 million. What the hell do I want it for? I'm not letting Nick Foles walk away from this organization without getting some sort of compensation this year for him, like right now. Right now. I'm just not letting a Super Bowl MVP, a guy who helped the Eagles turn around their season this year and get into the playoffs and upset the Bears and go toe-to-toe for the same. I'm not just letting that guy walk out the building. What I think should and what will happen, again, could be completely wrong on this, but I'll give you my reasons as to why I think it's going to go down like this, and it should make a lot more sense afterwards. I would opt into Nick Foles. I'd let him opt out, and then I would franchise tag him. I certainly hope there is a mutually beneficial way for the Eagles to communicate with Nick Foles and find a landing spot for him that benefits both the Eagles and Nick Foles. And I know that sounds a little harsh. That sounds a little, cold-blooded or business-like, but you got to understand something. A, it is a business. The NFL is a business, and we will certainly be reminded of that this offseason. But, number two, there's only a limited amount of teams that are going to be interested in Nick Foles anyway. And chances are, of those limited amount of teams, Nick Foles, if he was a free agent, was going to have to pick from a list of, like, I don't know, 3, 4, potentially maybe 5 teams. So chances are the team that the Eagles would trade Nick Foles to would be one of those teams that he would sign in free agency anyway. I mean, look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, a highly thought of. Even the Vegas odds on the Jags are pretty damn high. By the way, there's Vegas odds on when or where Nick Foles is going to end up next year. But they just signed DeFilippo, all right, who is a excellent quarterback coach. I still think, despite what happened in Minnesota, a good offensive coordinator. And a guy who has a reputation in the locker room of kind of being, I don't know, demanding, a perfectionist, a guy who fits exactly what Doug Peterson and Frank Reich put into place during that Super Bowl run. But he's demanding. He's a demanding guy. So if you think for 1 second that Doug Marrone is going to allow Blake Bortles to be in the same room as John DeFilippo when, you know, he couldn't even get along with Kirk Cousins, you got another thing coming. I mean, that is the absolute perfect scenario for Nick Foles, to go down to Jacksonville, a team who was in the AFC Championship game all but a year ago, a team that has a lot of good talent around them, and a guy with his former offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach, you know, / offensive game plan manager, red zone manager. Why wouldn't Nick Foles want to go to Jacksonville? But, I mean, there's other destinations. You know, there's the Denver Broncos. There's the Miami Dolphins. There's also the Washington Redskins, which is all the more reason to franchise tag him so he doesn't go to another NFC East opponent. I know, you know, the New York Giants have been thrown out there as a potential landing spot. There is Vegas odds on that. I don't see that happening, but you never know. You know, once you let a player go, he can sign wherever he wants to for whatever he wants to. There's even odds on Carolina. There's odds on Oakland, although I think John Gruden, despite what many people think, actually likes Derek Carr and likes working with him. But Oakland could be another option. So if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you franchise tag Nick Foles, and then you start playing the bidding game. Now, I don't think you're going to get a first-round pick for Nick Foles. I know we got a first-round pick for Sam Bradford. That was kind of a goofy scenario. It was right before the season. The Minnesota Vikings panicked out. But we think we're going to make a playoff run. We need Sam Bradford. Here's a first-round pick. I don't think you're going to get that. And also considering that when you talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Miami Dolphins or the Denver Broncos, I think the Miami Dolphins have the lowest pick at pick 13. So you're not going to get a top 10 pick for Nick Foles. I mean, you never know. Maybe. But how great would it be to walk into Tennessee, into the NFL draft, the 2019 NFL draft, with the 25th overall pick, which the Eagles own, and then 3 second-round picks? I think you can get a second-round pick for Nick Foles. Why the hell couldn't you? I mean, that's like the going rate on a backup quarterback who you think might be a potential starter in the league. That's what a second-round pick is what you get for Jimmy Garoppolo. A second-round pick is what once upon a time Miami gave you for A.J. Feely, just based upon a good couple games. This is a Super Bowl MVP quarterback. This is a starter in the league. This is a guy that knows what the bright lights and the spotlights and the big moments are all about and hasn't failed in those moments. This is a starting quarterback in the NFL. You should be able to get a first, and likelihood you'll get a second. But if Jacksonville is like, well, you know, you franchise him and he goes and they try to call your bluff, you got Denver on the horn. You got Miami on the horn, possibly Carolina, possibly Oakland. You've got other teams who are going to be interested in Nick Foles, and then you start bidding them against. So people said to me on Twitter that Nick Foles holds all the leverage in this situation. And from this seat, from my eyes, that couldn't be further from the truth. It could be. I know everybody wants to get sentimental and say that Nick Foles deserves the opportunity to go find the team that he wants, and certainly, you know, there's a lot of validity to that. But chances are the team that he wants is a team that would be willing to give you an asset just to guarantee it. Why not take advantage of that situation? Why not take advantage of that? Again, I don't know if this is exactly what's going to happen, but if the Eagles were smart, you know, going into Tennessee with a first-round pick and 3 second-round picks, I mean, there's going to be a lot of free agents exiting this season. There's a lot of veterans that are going to get paid by other teams, overpaid by other teams, and the Eagles simply aren't going to want to sign them and or move on. You know, you're talking about Brandon Graham and possibly Jordan Hicks, and what do you do with Jason Peters and Jay Ajayi? Do you bring him back? Ronald Darby's going to be a free agent. Right now, the Eagles' needs, I think, heaviest are running back, defensive end, offensive line depth, linebacker, depending on what they do with Jordan Hicks, safety. Malcolm Jenkins is getting up there in age, and also, you know, you don't know what condition Rodney's going to be in. If you have a first-round pick in 3 seconds, you're drafting a running back. You're drafting probably a defensive end. You're probably drafting a safety. Maybe even a wide receiver. You're surrounding this Carson Wentz, who is the core of who's the absolute building block upon which this franchise will be built. You're surrounding him with cheap, young talent because Carson's contract is right around the corner. I doubt it's going to be this offseason, especially after coming off of injury. But next year, you better believe that Carson Wentz is going to be demanding that big, just getting out of his rookie contract deal money. So those are the 4 scenarios. You know, they keep him unlikely, ties up way too much money. It's not advantageous for the team. Handcuffs you as far as what you can do in free agency. He walks away. I don't think that's going to be either. They opt in, and then they just, you know, if you're going to opt in and have him opt out, and that's the game plan, just opt out altogether. Don't make Nick Foles pay you back $2 million. That's ridiculous if you're just going to let him walk. I do think they franchise tag him. And I do think they find a mutually beneficial landing spot. The team Howie talks to the other teams, talks to Nick. Where would you like to be? Where would you like to go? And then they try to gas that fucking team for all that it's worth. But either way, this, you know, hashtag Foles Watch is going to be by far one of the most interesting storylines of the offseason. Right next to probably the Steelers and Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and what happens over there. That fucking Kardashian scenario that they got going on over there. Thank God the Eagles aren't like that, right? Thank God, you know, this is a good locker room. Oh, fuck. Well, kids, the dome light's off. And we're just about 18 minutes into this thing. So, fuck it. Let's wrap it up. Talk to you later.